My childhood crush that rejected me suddenly declares she wants to be with me, just as I was about to propose to her younger sister. I am Victor, 26 years old, and my childhood friend, Amelie, is also 26. We are both from Las Vegas, Nevada. We grew up knowing each other since we were children, and our families eventually became close-knit, celebrating our birthdays, Christmas, and New Year's together. For as long as I can remember, I've always been in love with Amelie. She knew it, as did our families. Our parents always joked and made references that one day we could get married and unite our families even more. When we were 15 years old, I confessed my love to Amelie, but she rejected me. She said she didn't want it to affect our great friendship and that perhaps in the future, we could try something. Heartbroken, I accepted it. When we were 18 years old, about to enter college in Pasadena, I confessed my love to Amelie again, but she said no. She wanted to live life. She said she was going to college in Los Angeles, which surprised me since we were both supposed to have sent our applications to the University of Pasadena. Pasadena is in California, just like Los Angeles, but I was shocked by what Amelie told me. I didn't think she had those thoughts. She went on to tell me that one of her friends, with whom she was also going to Los Angeles, told her to live her life, saying that university education was the best way to grow up as a person. This way, she could experience everything, and when she entered marriage, she would do so without any regrets. She encouraged me to do the same and said that when we met again, we would be ready to start something. I didn't say anything in response, I just nodded since I understood that Amelie didn't view relationships and commitment the same way I did. This is how I started my university life with a broken heart. From time to time, I would look at Amelie's social networks and see how she posted pictures of the parties she attended at the university with other boys and girls. This made me feel sad, and it started to affect my academic performance. When I realized this, I decided to leave Amelie behind and focus on myself and my studies. I spent a year focusing on improving in college and started exercising, as I wasn't in good shape. One day, while running around the university, I saw a young woman who looked familiar. It was Amelie's younger sister, Haley. I was surprised and went to greet her. She was also surprised and blushed, which I thought was very sweet. I asked her what she was doing at this university and joked, "You didn't come here just to meet me, did you?" That made her blush even more, and we both laughed. I remembered that when we were younger, Haley and I barely talked since I only had eyes for Amelie. Whenever Haley was alone with me, she would always find an excuse to leave. I asked Haley if she wanted me to show her the campus. A little nervous, she said yes. That's how our university years went by, and I got to know Haley better. I was surprised to see how much we had in common, and over time, I realized I liked her. I loved the way she looked at me and convinced her to exercise with me. Unlike Amelie, Haley had always been on the lighter side, and I was amazed by the incredible transformation she underwent. 2 years later, we decided to start dating because I had fallen in love with her, and she confessed that she had always had feelings for me. However, she knew I only had eyes for Amelie and didn't want to interfere with my love for her sister. Knowing that Haley was that kind of woman made me love her even more. By the time I graduated, I decided to stay in Pasadena, look for a job, and find an apartment while waiting for Haley to finish her final year of college. During the years we were in college, Haley and I would come home in the summer and spend time together, but Amelie never came back. She said she was too focused on her studies. Haley and I decided not to tell our parents about our relationship since we knew they might meddle a bit. We planned to tell them later. By the time Haley graduated, I already had a job where I could work happily. Since Haley had studied the same as I did, she could join the same company as me, but in another department. In case you're wondering, we both studied systems engineering. 2 years passed in which Haley and I focused on our relationship and our work. I had prepared a surprise for Haley. I wanted to propose to her in front of our families. So, I took 2 days off work to go to my parents' house, where both our families would gather for the weekend. I wanted to give her the surprise then. On Thursday, I mentioned to Haley that I had to go to my parents' house for something not very important and told her she could join me on Saturday. She looked a little confused but said she was fine with it. When I arrived at my parents' house, they greeted me warmly, and so did my sisters. My mother then said, "See who's here." When I turned to the living room, I saw Amelie. She got up quickly to greet me and tried to kiss me on the cheek, but I pulled away. She looked confused, and my mother told me, "Son, get ready because in the evening, we'll all get together for dinner." I knew that meant my family and Amelie's family were going to meet for dinner. I thought it was fantastic since with everyone there, it would be easier to share my surprise with them and Haley. I spent the rest of the day talking with Amelie and was surprised by everything she said, how much fun she had at parties and how she had hooked up with a lot of guys. She talked about it as if it had been a great experience and even said, "I hope you had a good time too," while winking at me. I couldn't believe everything she was saying. I just replied that I had a great time as well. That night, I told my parents I wanted to talk to them about something very important. They said, "Yes, we think we know what it is," and laughed. I thought Haley must have told them about our relationship. When we were at dinner, with Amelie's parents on one side and mine on the other, I tried to get everyone's attention. I wanted to say something important, and Amelie's mother and mine turned to look at me and smiled, which made me a bit nervous. But before I could say anything, Amelie spoke up and said, "Don't worry, Victor, I'll say it." She then turned to look at me and said, "Victor, yes, I accept to be your girlfriend." When I heard that, I couldn't help but be speechless. Update 1. My childhood crush that rejected me suddenly declares she wants to be with me, just as I was about to propose to her younger sister. My mom and her mom clapped and screamed, "Long live the bride." But I didn't say anything. I just stood still, and everyone was staring at me, confused. By the time I finally came to my senses, I asked Amelie what she was doing. Amelie smiled at me and said, "Hey, it's okay, everyone already knows." I replied, knows what? She said, everyone knew you were going to ask me to be your girlfriend. Then I started laughing because I thought it was a joke, but when I saw that everyone was staring at me, a little confused, I understood it wasn't a joke. I said, Amelie, I don't know where you got that idea, but I would never date a woman like you. She looked at me, confused, and said, why not? I told her, I'm never going to be with someone that someone else has already been with. Her eyes filled with tears, and she got up and ran away. My mother yelled at me, how can you say that? How insensitive. Amelie's mother then said, how can you say that to my daughter? Can't you see that she has always been in love with you? I replied, yes, that's why she hooked up with a lot of guys in college. Her father then shouted, boy, what are you talking about? But my mother interrupted, Victor, she's young and had to experience life to learn. I bet you had your adventures too, right? I was surprised by what my mother said, and I replied, I haven't had any adventures, Mom, but there's a relationship I want to tell you about. I told them, I'm going to propose to Haley, and I want everyone's support. Everyone was stunned. Then Amelie's mom screamed, do you want me to support you with my daughter Haley when you didn't value my daughter Amelie? Amelie's dad added, I won't allow you to marry my daughter, especially after stalking her sister. I tried to defend myself, but he interrupted, Amelie told us that you said you were going to wait for her to finish her studies to have a relationship with her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She lies, sir, I responded. He dismissed my words, saying, whatever, I won't let you marry Haley. Amelie's mom echoed his sentiment, and as they got up to leave, I was left thinking about everything I had just learned. Then my mom called out, I demand that you break up with Haley because it's not fair what you're doing to her. I asked, what am I doing to her, according to you? My mom replied, it looks like you're only with Haley despite Amelie. I turned to my dad and asked if he felt the same. He said, it's all very strange because you never told us about this relationship, and now you suddenly want to marry her. Just as I was about to say something, my phone rang. It was Haley, and she sounded a little upset. What's going on? Why am I receiving calls and messages from my parents telling me to stay away from you? Trying to calm her down, I told her I was talking to them and that we could explain everything later. Then, someone desperately knocked on the front door. When my mom opened it, Amelie rushed in, crying, tell me it's not true that you want to marry Haley. Tell me you're not doing this just because I rejected you. How can you do this to me? She said all this while crying, and my mom comforted her and hugged her while glaring at me with an angry face. Not being able to stand it any longer, I left my parents' house, got into my car, and headed toward Pasadena. When I arrived at my apartment, it was already early in the morning, and I was surprised to see Haley awake, sitting in our living room. She came up to me, hugged me, and asked, what's going on? Why am I receiving calls and messages from my parents and unpleasant messages from Amelie? I sat her down and told her everything, from the surprise I had planned for her to everything that happened afterward. I then asked, what do you want to do? She said, what do you say we go talk to our parents tomorrow, the two of us together? I replied, I don't think it's a good idea, but she insisted, let's just put an end to this, since it doesn't matter, I want to marry you. I smiled and asked, then you do accept? She said, of course, I accept, and we kissed and went to bed. The next morning, we went to talk to our parents, and it should be noted that nothing went right. There were screams and insults, and Haley's dad and I ended up in a fight, as he accused me of being a liar and manipulator. Even the police came and arrested both of us. I spent one day in detention before my dad posted my bail, even though my mom didn't want him to. When I got out, I went to my parents' house because my dad said Haley was there. When I arrived, I saw that Haley had a black eye. I asked her what had happened, and she said Amelie had attacked her when she refused to break up with me. Her mother also kicked her out of the house. I hugged her as she cried, and my mom said, it's all your fault. If only you had told us about your relationship earlier, and if you hadn't given Amelie false hope, this wouldn't have happened. I asked, what false hopes? Haley explained that Amelie had shown their parents fake messages, supposedly between me and her, where I gave her false hope. But even after seeing that, Haley didn't believe her. That's when Amelie exploded and punched her. I hugged Haley again and told her everything would be fine. My mom, still upset, said, because of this, our New Year's celebration was ruined. My dad told her to shut up. He then came up to us and said, no matter what others say, I give you my blessing to get married. He hugged us, and having my father's support made me very happy. Then my dad asked, can you give me an explanation for why Amelie is so angry with you? I replied, I don't know, but I know something isn't right with her. My mom didn't seem convinced by my explanation, so I let her look at my phone to show her that there were no messages between me and Amelie. Only then did she calm down and apologize for how she had acted. That's when Haley and I decided to return to Pasadena. As the days went by, my dad called me to tell me what had happened with Amelie. At first, I didn't want to hear it, but in the end, I decided to listen. My dad told me that days after we left, Amelie's mother discovered that everything Amelie had said was a lie. Amelie had faked those messages, believing that when we returned, I would accept her as if nothing had happened. When I heard that, I couldn't help but laugh, but my dad continued. He said it was also discovered that Amelie didn't finish college and was expelled for her immoral and irresponsible behavior. She never went to class and was eventually banned from flying on any airline for 10 years after driving her car onto an airport runway while under the influence of alcohol, causing a lot of damage. I was surprised by how fast karma caught up with Amelie, but I decided not to think about her anymore because I had a wedding to plan. When we returned to Pasadena, Haley gave me an incredible surprise. We're going to be parents. Haley and I are still debating whether or not to invite her parents to our wedding, as they did apologize to us over the phone. But to be honest, whether they come or not doesn't matter to me. All I want is for Haley to be happy, no matter what.